almost 350,000 manufacturing jobs last year, with a projection of 9 million new climate jobs in America by 2030. The Inflation Reduction Act is also a historic opportunity to ensure that we are building out the clean energy economy with good-paying, family-sustaining jobs. The IRA's prevailing wage and apprenticeship provisions help ensure that companies wishing to take advantage of enhanced clean energy tax credits will pay laborers and mechanics the applicable prevailing wage, including fringe benefits for all hours on a climate job. These provisions are already paying off, with research finding that landing a clean energy job can result in an 8 to 19% income increase, and that the transition to a clean energy economy will benefit union workers. The percentage of workers represented by a union or covered under a project labor agreement in the transmission, distribution, solar, and wind sector is equal to or higher than the overall energy workforce, and significantly higher than the national private sector average. And so today we have the opportunity to hear from the climate workers that are here on our panel, and the unions working to train the next generation, the new generation of clean energy workers, build an equitable economy, and lead the world in the fight against our climate crisis. And with all of that said, we know our work is far from done. We must build upon this moment. SEEC members are committed to continuing the work for even more broad climate action in Congress. Particularly, our Climate Jobs Task Force, which is meeting here today, is committed to advancing policies that are pro-worker and pro-climate. But today I am excited to welcome our guests and have them share their experiences today as we continue this important work. And we're going to start today with Jason Walsh, a good friend of mine and the executive director of the Blue-Green Alliance, for some opening remarks. And then I'm going to ask each of the panelists to also provide some thoughts as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Congresswoman. It's a pleasure to be here. For those of you not familiar with the Blue-Green Alliance, we're a national partnership of labor unions and environmental organizations that was founded on the principle that Americans should not have to choose between good jobs and a clean environment, that we can and must have both. And we had the privilege of working with SEEC and a number of members among its coalition to translate that principle into specific policy provisions and programs within the House Build Back Better Act, and then ultimately within the Inflation Reduction Act, and did a bunch of work to make sure that historic piece of legislation got across the finish line last year. It is cause for celebration. We think it's enormously significant, not just because it represents the biggest ever investment in climate action and clean energy deployment, but also because it's the most fully formed embodiment of industrial policy that we've seen in this country since the New Deal, in which lawmakers invested in strategic economic sectors that are of importance to the United States and its people, not to mention the fate of the planet, and crucially, attach conditions to those taxpayer dollars, you referenced a few of them, Congresswoman, just now, that maximize the public benefits of these investments for workers and communities and the environment. So through that lens, which is our lens, this is not simply a piece of legislation, this is not simply a climate and energy bill, right? It's a theory of how the clean energy economy should work, and work for all of us. Emphasis on the all of us, right? What we've learned over the last year is that passing the IRA, as soul-destroying and frustrating as that was at times, is actually easier than implementation. Implementation is hard work. It is our top organizational priority as a coalition this year. And for us, it's about getting implementation right, which we define as using these programs, using these investments to build a high-road clean energy economy, a worker-centered, community-centered clean energy economy that results in high-quality union jobs, a more equitable economy in society, and in concrete benefits for the communities that need it most. Right? It's been really exciting, actually. I complain about it. I think I just kind of implicitly complain about how hard it is, but this is a good problem to have because we've never certainly in my career, in my lifetime, never had the ability to work with such federal resources at such a scale, and such good policies attached to them. But in the spirit of this conversation, I want to name a couple of challenges, right, that I think we have to grapple with in order to realize the full potential of the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm going to name two. I'm going to start with job quality, right? You mentioned some good data, and it's encouraging data. We've got some room to grow and to move, right? We still have an unacceptably large gap. And for us, the comparison is between workers in fossil fuel sectors, right, and workers in clean energy sectors. The gap is still big. We got even data from the 2022 BLS that shows that. So we got to close it. Congressional Democrats tackled this challenge head on by attaching the labor standards you referenced just now, which are historic. First time ever we've attached labor standards to clean energy tax credits. And that's, we think, going to fundamentally change job quality within the construction sector, as we build out these installations. But we're going to need to do more. We're going to need to do it across multiple sectors. And in particular, I want to flag the need to really lift up job quality within the clean manufacturing sector in particular. Right? Second challenge is around workforce development. Bottom line, we've got to ensure that there is a sufficient supply of skilled workers to meet what will be an exponentially increasing demand for skilled workers over the next decade. That demand will be enormous. According to analysis by the Political Economy Research Institute, which we commissioned, they released it in September, the investments of the IRA combined with the other two big pieces of industrial policy, CHIPS and Bill, in combination will support 3 million jobs annually, which is a huge number. That's like 2% of the overall U.S. workforce. So what that will mean is that businesses involved in the clean energy economy will need to recruit, train, retain workers at an unprecedented pace and scale over the next decade plus. And they've got to do it as money flows disproportionately into sectors like manufacturing, like construction, like utilities, like transportation and warehousing, where we are already seeing very, very tight labor markets, where in some cases labor shortages already exist, and where the incumbent workforce is aging. The one in four manufacturing workers, 1 in 5 construction workers are age 55 or older. And in addition to being older, the incumbent workforce, the current workforce, is disproportionately white and disproportionately male. So bottom line, we are not going to be able to make and build and repower our way to a clean energy economy or create a workforce that looks more like America, right, and achieves our equity goals, unless we bring to bear intentional workforce strategies and the resources that go with them. For all of the great things that ultimately made in the IRA, one of the things we lost is the entire workforce title of the House Build Back Better Act, right? So just to be clear, what we don't have is resources for our workforce, our federally funded workforce development system, federally funded career technical education system, and national apprenticeship programs that should accompany these job-creating investments, right? We need to be able to match resources for the demand side and the supply side of the labor market, and we're not quite there. So two big challenges around job quality and workforce development that are going to require various solutions, but let me name one solution that may be more important than any other, which is unions. Right? Unionization is the single most important pathway to job quality. I don't think I have to refer to all of the data on that. It allows workers to collectively bargain with their employers for better wages, benefits, and working conditions. And on the workforce side, unions and their labor management partners are among the very best workforce development practitioners in the country, and in the construction sector really represent the gold standard for workforce training. So the closing thought I want to leave my colleagues here with is that we need to use every lever of the federal government to ensure that IRA investments, and I would add bill and chip investments, go to companies that recognize the right to collectively bargain, that partner with unions in good faith, that pay workers a fair day's wage for a fair day's work in safe and healthy conditions, and at the same time that we are enforcing the legal rights of workers to organize free of harassment and intimidation, and in some cases termination. So with those thoughts, I'm looking forward to this conversation and hearing from my brothers and sisters.
Thanks, Jason. That was really helpful. I really appreciate that. And I also want to acknowledge my good friend and co-chair of SEEC, Paul Tonko, for joining us here for this discussion as well. So thank you, Paul, for being here.
Thank you all to all of our witnesses. Thank you for participating.
Yep. As we're getting started, we're going to go to our first panelist, China Hampton, who is a good friend of mine. She is the Equity Director for Climate Jobs Illinois. And would love to hear about your work. And I know Jason just emphasized the importance of diversity of this workforce and making sure that we have an equity lens to all of this work. And so I'll turn it over to you to start us off.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you to the members of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, and thank you, Representative Bazinski, for inviting me to participate today. As Representative Bazinski stated, my name is China Hampton. I am from Chicago, Illinois. I am the Equity Director for Climate Jobs Illinois in partnership with the State of Illinois American Federation of Labor. I am excited to be here today to discuss why your investment in clean energy has played a part in Illinois being a leader in creating an equitable workforce in clean energy and the strongest labor standards in the nation. I think I should repeat that. Illinois being a leader in creating an equitable workforce in clean energy and the strongest labor standards in the nation. For the last year, I've worked alongside our labor leaders, Hire 360, and nonprofits to build a coalition of already established organizations that would be ready to apply to Illinois' Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity grant titled the Climate Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program. The Climate Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program was made possible through funding set aside through the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. This funding will allow nonprofit organizations across the state of Illinois to train the next generation of individuals interested in pursuing careers in the clean energy sector. While individuals go through these respective training programs, CEJA funding allows them to receive stipend support, additional support with transportation, housing, childcare, and mental health services. These are life-changing opportunities, not only for individuals enrolled in these programs, but also the nonprofit organizations that have an opportunity to collaborate with labor leaders in ensuring that training for candidates into apprenticeship programs meet the standards necessary. In Illinois, this funding is necessary and has helped us to make an impact in the individuals enrolled in these programs. Take, for instance, Colton Moser, a laborer from Local 727, who has been dispatched to a wind farm and has been able to have sustainable wages. Or Stacy Reynolds, who before she joined the union, her mode of transportation was a pink bike. But now, as a solar installer, she has her car and her own apartment and is thriving. So thank you. Because of your impact with the funding that we've received, this will affect, as you will see today, generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, China. And I want to acknowledge Congresswoman Bonamici, who joined, who's a co-chair along with myself of this task force, the Climate Jobs Task Force with SEEC. So I just want to say welcome. And I went a little out of order, so I'm going to go back to the original order, and I apologize, Eric. I jumped ahead and went right to China. I didn't mean to do that. But I do want to welcome Eric Romero, who is a member of the International Union of Electrical Workers, the Communication Workers of America, Local 301. From New York, and welcome your thoughts and remarks.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, Congressman Bazinski and members of the caucus, and I thank you for the opportunity to join you here today. My name is Eric Romero, and I've been a proud member of IUECWA, Local 301, for over 11 years. I was connected in New York. For over a decade, I've worked as what is now known as GE Vernova, as a winder building steam turbines and generators, and also as one of our local's full-time safety representative. I recently transitioned to a new role as a material handler in Environmental Waste Processing Department in GE Aerospace. A little bit of history of where I work. Thomas Edison set up General Electric in Schenectady over 130 years ago, and we've been known as the Electric City ever since. For generations, thanks to the unions, this was a good job where people could retire from, where we could see our kids grow. They would get a job here, and we watch them build a family of their own. GE used to employ 30,000 hourly union workers back in the 1970s. After decades of bad trade deals and mass offshoring and outsourcing, our numbers have been decimated and now hover around 700 members. This has devastated not only Schenectady, but our surrounding communities as well. But now, together with our union, IUECWA, we've been fighting for wind power manufacturing jobs to come to Schenectady. As we transition to environmental conscious, sustainable energy, we want to keep making the equipment that keeps the lights on in America and around the world. Like many of my colleagues, not only do I want a healthy planet for our kids, but I also want to be able to pay my bills. We've been saying for years, we have the history, we have the skills, we have the training, we have the workers, we just need the investments. I'm proud to report that we're finally starting to see some of those investments come to fruition. Thanks to our union's fight and the investment through the IRA, GE Vernova is bringing 200 onshore wind assembly jobs to our facility in Schenectady, New York. I'm proud to be joined here today by my son, Eric, who is one of those new hires. In addition to the 200 onshore wind jobs, GE Vernova plans to build 2 offshore wind facilities 30 miles south of our shop, adding another 800 manufacturing jobs. The company has signed a labor peace agreement with IUECWA covering these facilities. This landmark agreement with GE Vernova sets a standard for offshore wind industries by letting workers exercise their right to organize a union without fear of retaliation. But GE will not build these facilities unless it receives enough orders, so it's imperative to see a stable, persistent pipeline of work coming our way. Looking back at our history at GE Schenectady, we are the ones that turn the lights on the world. We have kept the lights on ever since, and we have the capacity to keep the lights on in the future. I want to see Schenectady remain the electric city for generations to come, and I look forward to working with others here to make that happen. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much. And I'd welcome Eric if you'd like to make some additional comments as well on your experiences.
Oh, of course.
All right, Luis. There you go.
All right. All right. Well, good afternoon to everyone here. My name is also Eric Jose Romero, Jr., and thank you, Representative Baczynski, for having me and everyone here who's joined us today. I'm proud to have recently become a second-generation union member of the IUECWA Local 301 after being hired earlier this year as an assembler in GE Vernova's New Schenectady Wind Department. However, I graduated, actually a little bit about me, I graduated from Niskayuna High School in 2022, and my goal was not really to work at GE in the beginning. But however, when my father told me about the company and how they announced a new investment and the plan to hire 200 new workers for the company, I saw it as a potential position of opportunity for me and a stepping stone for myself. GE Vernova bringing the onshore wind work to Schenectady has really opened up opportunities for myself and many of my new colleagues that we didn't think we had coming our way. I got hired June 5th, making around $23.11 with full benefits, but soon after got bumped up to $24.50, thanks to the 6% raise my father and other members of the union have fought before I joined the company. By July, I will progress to the full rate of $29.19 for my entry-level job. Growing up in a union family, I know just how important it is to make sure the union is present and visible to all of our members. I watched my father work tirelessly to ensure his colleagues were safe on the job, and as he was a member of the 301 Health and Safety Committee and in the union's campaign to bring work to Schenectady. Working at GE Vernova in the wind department and joining the 301 has been a very positive experience for me. I also have a friend who is an environmentalist, and I understand why we need to move off our reliance of fossil fuels. In April, I was a part of a project in Puerto Rico to install solar panels on the homes of people impacted by the hurricanes. I installed solar panels on a nursing home in the mountains of San Juan, so residents will no longer have to worry if they lose power from the grid because they now have renewable backup. These solar panels help around 20 to 30 residents all around the year who do not get help from a lot of the government or their families, but will now have power for themselves all throughout the year. I want to help people here at home and around the world and believe we need to have to build new solutions to get everyone the electricity that they need. I am proud to join a long legacy of electrical workers in Schenectady that have turned and kept the lights on for generations, and I have hope for the future. As my father said, thanks to our union's fight and the investment through the IRA, GE Vernova is investing in our region and creating new union jobs, but we need to ensure that the investment continues. Good union jobs in the energy manufacturing should not be a partisan issue. We need to keep this energy transition moving forward and keep the manufacturing jobs and create on track. The IRA definitely has things moving forward in the right direction, and we cannot look backward on it, and because it would cost good work and union jobs like mine. If anything, we should be investing more to ensure that the company follows through and get these projects over the finish line. We need to make sure that there's a stable, persistent demand for power, equipment here in America in order for the investments that we are hoping to see in New York and across the country. My coworkers and I just finished building the first 3 nacelles, and we want to keep building them. As a person who's lived in Schenectady and been around the area and that works really on the floor daily, I walk in, I see a lot of my coworkers and stuff, the smiles and laughs that they provide, and I know that that is a result of the union and the safety net that they feel. And I know that we all have a common ambition to bring change to GE, and we want to make sure that it stays renewable, and I invite you all to keep the change going. And I am excited for what the future holds, and I appreciate the opportunity with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. I also just want to acknowledge Congressman Cartwright, also a co-chair of SEEC, and so.
And my mother was born in Schenectady.
Oh, there you go.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It all comes full circle.
Yes.
So wonderful, wonderful to have him join as well.
And he can spell Schenectady.
Pronounce it too.
That's great. I'm going to now move to Jeff. Jeff is a constituent of mine from Decatur, Illinois, and a member of IBEW Local 146 in Decatur. And so Jeff would love to open it up for your thoughts and the involvement of the community and obviously the IBEW as well in this clean energy transition.
Okay. Okay. Thank you to the members of the Sustainable Energy and Environmental Coalition, and thank you, Representative Buzinski, for inviting me to participate today. I'm very honored and humbled to be here. My name is Jeff Westnorf, and I am here to share my story and hope it will relay the importance of union labor building clean energy projects and show real-world impact of the Inflation Reduction Act. I started my career in 1996 as an apprentice journeyman wireman in the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, 146, Decatur, Illinois. I live in Diedrich, Illinois, on a generational family farm that growing up taught me to treat the earth with respect and the power harnessed from the sun. I am currently working at Boomtown Solar Farm. It's a 150 megawatt farm in IBEW 702, West Frankfort, Illinois. In my 27 years in the electrical industry, I have seen the power of project labor agreements, ensuring jobs finish on time, safely, and within budget by qualified craftsmen. While other projects, quality has suffered, going over budget, and struggled to finish under hazardous conditions. An IBEW 5-year apprenticeship program guarantees every member is skilled in 900 hours of hands-on classroom training and a minimum of 8,000 hours on the job. The IBEW has assisted the United States in the manufacturing and distribution of power for over 130 years. And it's given me the opportunity to provide a life for my family, which I'm very proud of. My union has bargained a livable wage that has allowed me to provide for my family that in such a way my son Jack has followed the same path. He is currently a 3rd-year apprentice in the IBEW Local 725, Terre Haute, Indiana. The IBEW has given me so much hope for the future that the first words I said to my grandson 3 weeks ago in the hospital was, "So you're going to be a wireman." I said that because I know the IBEW will continue to support local communities by providing a livable wage and a safe work environment for years to come. Bringing more sustainable jobs to the state of Illinois
which will allow many others to have the same positive impacts I have. With the movement from coal power in the state of Illinois to green energy, the Inflation Reduction Act is the opportunity to keep Americans working in good-paying jobs. This is the future I want for my grandchildren. Thank you very much for your time, and please support union jobs.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And I think we're going to now move to our final panelist, Kilton Webb from Maine. We're very glad to have you join another member of the IBEW Local 567. So welcome your remarks.
Thank you, members of the Sustainable and Energy and Environmental Coalition, and thank you, Representative Buzinski, for inviting me here today to participate in this important discussion about clean energy investments, the clean energy investments of the Inflation Reduction Act, and how they are transforming Maine. My name is Kilton Webb. I'm a 5-year member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 567, out of Portland, Maine. I'm proud here to represent my nearly 400 members out of IBEW Local 567. Our members mostly work in the commercial and industrial sectors. In less than 2 years since its passage, the Inflation Reduction Act has unleashed a renewable energy boom. IBEW members are proud to be among the tens of thousands of family-supporting new energy jobs that have been announced in communities from coast to coast. In Maine, Local 567 is leading the way for the growth potential of offshore wind power, which is key in the Biden-Harris administration's plan to decarbonize the electrical grid. In fact, due to the current anticipated offshore wind and solar work, we've taken in a record amount of apprentices this current year, taking in 60 as opposed to our typical classes of 25 or 30. As you know, in the United States, offshore wind is a new industry, and a lot of the development details take time to implement. But we're doing our own necessary groundwork with coalitions of community partners and training new members that represent not only clean energy future, but a long-sought workforce renewal in a state that sees many young residents flee to better job prospects elsewhere. With a project this big, it took the passion and energy of nearly a dozen different trades and community partnerships coming together to get the ball rolling on this historic offshore wind power campaign. At 2 gigawatts, this offshore development is so large, we anticipate it will put IBEW members to work for 30 years. This gives us plenty of opportunity to expand the ranks of IBEW. Right now, we are actively supporting this project in our state legislature. There's a lot of excitement to take this work to the finish line with a promise of high-quality union jobs that we need. In the past few years, I've been working on several commercial-sized solar field projects. At the end of November, myself and around 30 other IBEW members finished a solar field in Bristol, Maine. When it was time to have the inspector come in and review our work, he was so impressed with the workmanship that he told our general foreman that this was the new textbook quality work that he plans on holding all other contractors going forward. That is the beauty of our union standard and our core values. We have the knowledge on how to get the job done with the accuracy to do it correctly the first time, and we have the integrity to maintain a high level of quality. I appreciate the opportunity to come here to Washington and share our experience with the members of this important committee. Your work to help bring affordable energy and good jobs to my community will lower costs and contribute to a cleaner environment. Again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kilton. Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge Congressman Magaziner, also joining another SEEC member. At this point, I really want to turn it over to my colleagues for any questions they might have for our panelists. I have questions, but I'm going to wait on those and ask. And Congressman Cartwright has our first question.
Thank you. I'm glad we have a good representation from Schenectady, to be sure. But Kilton, you got my attention talking about installation of solar fields. One thing you hear about from time to time is that people who don't really know what they're doing, putting in solar installations, this is a lot of high voltage electricity you're dealing with. And are you aware of, like non-union workers trying to do this and getting hurt or, God forbid, getting killed? And how important is the training process that IBEW is famous for in protecting workers involved in solar field installation?
That's an excellent question. So as part of our apprenticeship going through, we all get our OSHA 10s just as a baseline to start with to ensure that we know how to operate on a construction site, which is inherently dangerous, safely. Just the OSHA 10 alone, I find is extremely valuable. And unfortunately, there are plenty of examples of job sites where I've heard of, and this last one that I was on in Bristol, there was a small incident with a non-union contractor, and it was actually with just potential energy, with just the weight of dozens of panels. If each solar panel weighs roughly 75 pounds and you have 25 of them up on a purling, what ended up happening is they weren't correctly taking the bolts out to shift how it was, and the entire thing collapsed. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but if that were to have struck someone, if they were underneath it, I don't want to guess what would have happened. Fortunately, everyone was okay, but that's the example of carelessness on the job site.
I was thinking about people being electrocuted. I wasn't thinking about them falling on people. But
yeah.
Sure, that's safety too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Jason would like to add, and then we'll go to Congressman Caston.
It's a great question, and I just want to just note that, electrical work, of course, is inherently dangerous, right? But let's also just also focus on the manufacturing side as well, right? And I think it's an issue not just of the proper training, which is really important, but then also having the systems in place and the institutions in place that will make sure that the work is safe moving forward. Eric, you talked about the work that you do, right, for IUE. That's an active workers' council that is constantly working with management to make sure that the work is as healthy and safe as possible on an ongoing basis. If you have a non-union workforce, you typically don't get that.
Congressman Caston.
Thank you for being here. And just, as a note of personal privilege, it is not often in this line of work that you get to pass a law and then immediately see the change come through, and to come through kind of in the way that you wanted it to come through. Somebody told me once that the great thing about passing laws is that change happens. The horrible thing is that you don't really know what you were incentivizing until you see the change happen. And, and the numbers that are coming through of the job creation, tight labor markets, better negotiating status, the successful union negotiations. You all played a great role, but proud of the legislation we did. Jason, I pick up on a conversation I think I had with you about 3 years ago that you may or may not remember. But I have this concern that you can either disabuse me of or tell me what we need to do to fix it. That while we're creating a ton of jobs, we're creating very different jobs. Convert a coal plant to a gas plant, you don't need material handlers anymore. Convert a gas plant to a wind turbine, you don't need a whole lot of high-temperature welders and water treatment people. Convert a wind turbine to a solar farm, you don't have rotating equipment anymore. And as I tell everyone, drive by the coal plants and notice how empty the parking lot is. Drive by a solar plant and tell me when you see a parking lot. And I don't say that to criticize, right? As our economy becomes more labor productive, is great. But we're shifting from manufacturing jobs that are in one location with one employer to a lot of construction jobs that are in various places. I think my IBEW friends, you've got members on both sides of that trade. For the AFL, you've probably got some people who are winning and losing, and we in the House, we put strong labor standards on the EV side. The Senate weakened those, and I'd like to see us fix those. I think the idea of how we provide better protections to workers in those more mobile jobs was obviously through the PRO Act. But I'm wondering what kind of tension you all are feeling on that transition. Is it real? What can we do? What can we do legislatively to make sure that we still have that we still have good labor protections and a good union workforce, and make sure that the gains of all this labor productivity do flow through to everybody in the economy, as you mentioned. Does that make sense? And if you say, like, you're totally wrong, Gaston, because you guys get it so great and you're perfect and just want to bow before us, that's fine as well.
You can probably guess I'm not going to answer it that way. No, it's a great question. And you're right. We're losing jobs, right? In some areas, in some occupations, and in some facilities, particularly at the power plant level. And we still do not have a system in place in this country that adequately supports workers in those facilities who are dislocated from what are family-sustaining jobs, often living in areas where there is not an equivalent job paying that kind of wage and benefit structure that they can move to. That's one of the things we didn't get in the IRA, and I would welcome the opportunity in the next Congress, which we hope will be a little bit better than this one, to work with you and this entire coalition to fix that. I will say that I think I think we are losing a certain number of operations and maintenance jobs. I think the data is pretty clear at this point that we are gaining a lot of manufacturing jobs, right? We're essentially moving from, this is overly simplistic, but combusting the source of our fuels to making the source of our fuels, and that's a more labor-intensive process.
I didn't say more. We're undoubtedly creating more jobs and producing them.
Yeah.
But they're a different type of job.
That's right.
Because of dislocation.
Yeah, that's right. And on the manufacturing side, I mean, I will be candid. I am worried about union coverage of those jobs because we lost things like what you included, right? The collective bargaining agreement, 10% bonus in the House Build Back Better Act. Because we have, unfortunately, decades of industry trends where manufacturing facilities, new manufacturing facilities, locate in states that have labor protections that are few and far between and that actively discourage worker power. And what we do about that, I think, is a conversation we need to be having, and it's an important one. And certainly, one of the reasons we keep going back to incentivizing as much as possible, using every existing legal authority that we have. If agencies can drive investment, right, to companies that respect the rights of their workers to organize, that's half the ballgame. And I want to recognize the fact that under this administration, agencies have done some things they've never done before, like the community benefit plan model that the DOE uses, where they're requiring applicants for federal funding, right, to tell us how you're delivering high quality jobs, how you're advancing worker skills, how you're respecting the rights of workers to organize. We haven't had that before, but it needs to be done more consistently across agencies. What we're finding is that there's a lot of variability across agencies as they implement different programs of the Inflation Reduction Act. We need to tighten that up, and we need to elevate it.
Yeah, that's actually something just to mention, like I've been concerned about in the steel industry in particular, as we're moving to green steel manufacturing. I have steel manufacturing in my district, and I have a company that's looking to move down to Arkansas to manufacture that green steel, but Arkansas, while a great state, is not a close shop state like Illinois, So, and we've advocated at DOE to say, while they're providing these great incentives to these companies to build out renewable and clean energy manufacturing, they should also take into account the state's, the worker protections, the ability for there to be a union workforce is something important.
And in that very painful example, which you know better than most, right? I think we saw, 1,500 warn notices at Granite City this last week? I mean, that's an example of a company that is using decarbonization, I'll put air quotes around it, as a fig leaf for breaking their union contracts.
Right. Yeah.
And that I think we got to call out.
Yeah. Congressman Tonko.
Well, let me begin by thanking Nikki and Suzanne and Mark for having chaired today's forum. We appreciate you bringing labor to the table so that we can get your perspective. And I appreciate all the panelists, including the Romero brothers, who I represent. No, I know. It was a compliment, Eric.
Take the compliment. Yeah.
Yeah. We have sat down with their brethren in Schenectady to talk about these efforts, and very proud to incorporate your thinking into the work that we do. I'll share an observation and then ask you to respond to a question. America has always seemed to prosper and grow stronger when we rely on the pioneer spirit, which is fundamentally part of our DNA. And so thinking beyond the ordinary is incredible. What is your response as someone actively involved now in implementing these dollars when someone said this is a rush to green agenda? I mean, I'm assuming there's a lot of time to build what we need to.
There's a lot of time to build. I don't feel like we're rushing. I think it's the time. It's the time for transition. It's the time for new energy. We've seen it. Science, statistics will tell us what is going on with our world, and it's time to protect it. I think if we don't do something soon, we're definitely going to lose an opportunity to make sure we stop it or at some point mitigate whatever the hazards that are coming our way.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to respond to that? China.
Yes. So from my perspective, which is just kind of creating an equitable workforce, there is no such thing as a rush. We want to ensure that we are able to use these dollars to be able to create impact in these disadvantaged communities who are hugely affected by this. We want to be able to give these individuals where, we have the Romero brothers. I like that joke. We have them where it's impacting generations. That is what this is going to do. It's going to ensure that his children and his children's children will have sustainable jobs in the clean energy industry that's going to follow them for years and years to come.
Mm-hmm. And Kilton, were you going to say something? Okay, I'm sorry, and Eric too. So we have time for all of this. So.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off on that. I do believe that, even if there is a rush, it's a good rush. It is time for change. The time is now. I think we do need to move forward. And like you said, there is generational continuity that needs to grow. Me and my father are not the only, legacy there. A lot of the new hires are also legacies. A lot of their fathers, their children just came into the job along with me in my class. And I believe it is awesome to see that. It's great to see that, you see growth, you see people wanting to be there and do more. And it's definitely helping the community in a lot of more ways than shows.
Okay, and Kilton?
I find that sometimes action is how you can find the best answer. Just in my time alone, being in the solar world in installation, the change that we've seen on how the projects are actually constructed, the different things that are being manufactured and put out for us, they're not the same as they were 5 years ago. Just in 5 years, things have come so far. So there's a certain aspect where you can continue to think about it and try and come up with the best solution, or we can act now, and through trial and error, we can come up with the best way while actually currently doing something about it.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick question, and I'll yield back to Nikki. Do you find yourselves being messengers in this clean energy agenda? Do people ask about your work? Do you share with them what's going on? And are you building community awareness and perhaps acceptance?
Up to answer that. I think it's us being messengers. So everywhere I go, and I've traveled probably the last 4 weeks back and forth to DC and New York to talk about what we're doing as it concerns equitable careers in clean energy. I will gladly to bear the torch, to be the messenger, to ensure that folks know that, we're moving to a cleaner economy. But not only that, we want to ensure that individuals that want these jobs have that access and that opportunity. And if I have to be the messenger or torch bearer to ensure that folks know about the great work that is happening, then so be it. And all of the individuals, I think, on our panel today, we are here because we are the messengers. We are the torch bearers to share what is happening and how we can create more impact with more funding, but also just sharing what we're doing currently with the funding that we're receiving.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, Jeff?
I think that
all the local unions, not just the IBEW, the operators, all affiliations, as with the Inflation Reduction Act, has kind of put forward like a grassroots effort. And it's really hitting home on the home front, with all the public, I think that has been the biggest push that I've seen, that the leadership of our organizations at home are really making the push, and I think that's having a huge impact on what we see.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your comments, and I can say that I believe we have not messaged as well as we should from here. We've done monumental transformational legislation. You're putting it into action, but we need to join in that messaging in a better way. So thank you for what you're doing and what you're messaging. Vicki?
Thanks, Paul. To my co-chair, Congresswoman Bonamici.
Thank you so much. Well, and thank you to my co-chair of the Climate Jobs Task Force here in the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition. And thank you to all of you for being here to share your stories and experiences. I serve on the Education and Workforce Committee, and then Representative Kasten and I spent several years together on the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. So he can confirm that throughout the process of that Select Committee and throughout all these discussions, not just about the Inflation Reduction Act, which the framework of came from our comprehensive climate action plan, but also as we were talking about CHIPS and Science and the infrastructure bill as well as the IRA, I was the one who was saying, great, this is very exciting. Who's going to do all these jobs? So I think it's a really important and exciting conversation that we're having here today. So I represent a district in Oregon, on the left coast, as some say, and I'm going to ask all of you to comment on something, but I just wanted to tell Mr. Webb that in the other Portland, on the west coast, I was able to get $1 million for Work Systems, which is our Portland Metro Workforce Development Board. They're developing a partnership with IBEW and NECA to train and support diverse workers seeking those good-paying union jobs in solar installation. So I'm excited about that partnership and that collaboration. But as we work on developing the workforce, what I would like each of you to comment on just briefly is the importance of the support services along the way. Now, whether that be not just the training, but childcare, tools, support services to get through a program and then be able to retain that position. So if you could each comment on what support services are important in the training program. And I was going to ask you, Ms. Hampton, because environmental justice was sort of woven throughout our climate action plan, but it is also really critical that we make these good jobs available to people historically left behind. We have in Oregon, I always brag about Oregon tradeswomen. We have a higher percentage of women in the trades in Oregon because we have an active group that's recruiting. So if you could each say a little something about the importance of support going through your program where you gained your skills, and then with the focus on diversity in that group. And then I have another question for Jason, so if you'll allow me.
So currently through the program that we work with through the Climate Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program, just really quickly, we've set aside funds where it is called the Barrier Reduction Fund. And so as you mentioned before, folks that come into these workforce development programs have a numerous amount of barriers. What we want to ensure is the only thing that they focus on is the training so that you can go through this process seamlessly. So our Barrier Reduction Fund covers transportation, childcare, housing assistance, you name it. We're working with Uber and Lyft to do some different things too. But what's really been important with our Barrier Reduction Fund is we're covering mental health services. We understand that as people are going through different facets and walks of life, they need mental health support. And so that's what we're doing. We want to assist them, with mental health services being covered by our Barrier Reduction Fund.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Webb.
That's so great to hear about your local of IBEW getting that funding, because we hear so often about the labor shortage, but I don't think it's really a labor shortage. What I think it really is an opportunity shortage. And I feel that unions with our apprenticeship program are really the ones who are best equipped to bridge that opportunity gap and create all these great paying jobs with great benefits and great pay. And I really think that is the way going forward, is having fully funded apprenticeships where they have the resources needed to help us with this just transition into clean energy.
Terrific, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on the importance of that, of support through a program so you can finish your training?
Well, what we do is, well, China's from Illinois, we're all on the same page. Everything that she has said is what we're doing as well. So
That's great. Terrific.
I would say my training was very detailed. We had a lot of orientations, a big welcoming to our new class. I know a big part of the union came through to make sure we understood who was representing us, who were our bosses to go to when there was a problem, who we could speak to, and just all the human resources. We also had a lot of the people from the health and safety committee that my father was a part of, and they explained to us, how to get to them, how to report something, how to report an issue, how to report, something that an issue that might be not just with yourself, but, with a colleague or someone else, in the office. But I would say that all those faucets are really there. They made a good, they highlighted, our opportunities and how to get to them. And I would just say that
That's wonderful.
It's good.
I'm so glad you're here working with your dad. I think it's just awesome.
Thank you.
As well as he mentioned, being part of the IUE Safety Committee, I was in a very, privileged position. I engaged a lot with the new hires, and GE has been a reflection of its community, and being that there were so many jobs being outsourced, it got stuck in time.
Yeah.
Now that we have these jobs, we are definitely becoming more a reflection of our diverse community in Schenectady, New York, and the surrounding areas. There's a lot of resources that we also use through the union. Like he mentioned, when we go there, we let them know, we tell them we're there to help them or how to get help. So, there's a lot of that. And like I said, I was privileged to be in that position and see how how GE is becoming a reflection of its community there in Schenectady.
That's great. I have a quick question for Jason. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate the Blue-Green Alliance. So, we're working on updating the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. We owe maybe next week, we'll see. But hopefully we'll also be able to update the National Apprenticeship Act, which hasn't been updated since the 1930s, and things have changed a bit since the 1930s. So in addition to those pieces of legislation, career and technical education, and a lot of things to let people know there's a path to a good job, I want to talk real briefly about partnerships, because I think we see that a lot. For example, Portland Community College has a renewable energy systems program. So they're working with industry so that people get the training for the positions that are in the area. So can you talk a little bit about the partnerships among organized labor as well as schools, colleges, and industries to how can we best advocate for those types of partnerships so that we have the local training for the jobs that are available in that community?
First of all, Congresswoman, thank you for all of your work in championing of workforce issues. It's been a pleasure to work with you on this stuff over the years. What I would call the Portland Community College example you give is a sectoral training partnership. And based on what I know of that particular partnership, it's what I would call a high road sector partnership, right? Which is fundamentally focused on highest quality rather than lowest cost, right? And brings together partnerships, to use your term, of all the relevant employers, all the relevant education and training providers, all of the relevant unions, social service providers, right, to provide that sort of holistic support system, and both state and local government, right, to make sure that we are matching the supply and demand sides of the labor market. And why I think that's a particularly good model for the moment we're in is that we have because you drove investment to very specific sectors, we actually know what those sectors are, right? And we have a model out there that actually knows how to link up economic and workforce development on a sector-by-sector basis in a high-quality, high-road way. The challenge, of course, is the resource challenge, which I referred to in my opening remarks. This takes some resources.
Indeed.
And we would love to work with you and your colleagues to figure out how we can deliver more resources to these high-quality, high-road training partnerships, both in the context of WIOA reauthorization which we needed a different Congress to actually get across the finish line.
Yes, exactly.
But also separately as well.
Right, right. Well, and speaking of high quality, high road, that's why when we do the National Apprenticeship Act, we have to registered apprenticeships because we must have those standards.
And I mean, let's just acknowledge that one of the things you did right in the Inflation Reduction Act is to, with the registered apprenticeship utilization bonus, right? You leveraged the biggest, most important workforce training system in the construction trades, right?
Very exciting.
Which is 1,600 training centers across the country. If it were a 4-year degree granting institution, it would be the biggest in the country. So the fact that we have, and that's IBW, it's all the other crafts, the fact that we're bringing that system in to clean energy is enormously significant. The piece, I think, particularly if we want to get to our equity and inclusion goals, is that while joint labor management funds fund the actual apprenticeship program, often they don't extend to the pre-apprenticeship feeder programs, often run by community-based organizations or organizations like Oregon Tradeswomen, right? That is necessary to recruit and then prepare people to qualify for that exam to get into an apprenticeship program, right? Because that takes some work and preparation, and to support them in the process of doing that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I yield back. Thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank Congressman DeSaulnier, who's Congresswoman Bonamici and I's co-chair of this task force, so thank you for being here. I think Congressman Magaziner had our next question.
Thank you very much. I want to commend Representative Baczynski and Bonamici and DeSaulnier for their leadership in running this subcommittee and bringing us together on this important topic. I come from Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, we are very much on the front lines of climate change. We are the ocean state. Entire neighborhoods are being threatened with being literally wiped off the map in our state because of sea level rise and extreme weather. We are also a blue-collar state that understands the importance of unions and of supporting workers. And in our state, one of the most exciting opportunities in making this clean energy transition happen and including and lifting up workers in the process is offshore wind. Right now, I should say, first of all, Rhode Island is the home of the first offshore wind farm in North America that's been up and running for about 5 years now. We are currently building out a larger offshore wind farm. When that is complete, about 1/3 of our state's total electricity will come from offshore wind. And then there is another lease sale in the making. When that is complete and that project is built out, close to 100% of our state's electricity will come entirely from offshore wind. These turbines are being built and installed by the IBEW, by LIUNA, by the plumbers and pipe fitters, by the painters and glazers, among others. So it's a great story of how we can put people to work in good union jobs, transitioning to clean energy, and also importantly, in a way that is affordable for ratepayers. And obviously, we can't leave that out of the conversation either. Would not be possible to do this in an affordable way if it weren't for the Inflation Reduction Act and the work that so many of our colleagues here did in the last Congress. I want to continue this line of questioning about training and particularly apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. I hear you loud and clear. We have more work to do as a Congress in funding CTE programs, in supporting apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. We also have work as a federal government to do in leading by example. We need to make sure that we have strong PLAs for federal projects, et cetera. We've talked already about what a robust apprenticeship program looks like with associated supports. I'd like to talk about recruitment into apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeships. How do we do a good job? Because when I talk to our labor unions back home, that's one of their biggest struggles right now is it's a tight labor market. We have some good apprenticeship programs in the state, but it's hard to recruit people. And some of that may be breaking down stigma. Some of that may be going into communities that have historically been ignored when we've been recruiting into the trades. So I'd love to hear from all of you, what are the best practices that you've seen on the recruitment side, particularly for frontline communities, for communities that have not traditionally been engaged with? How do we get people interested in joining the trades?
So just kind of from our experience, you have to work with the community organizations that are already in those communities. They speak So I'm going to use like this really weird movie, The Lorax. So, you know, the Lorax is like, I'm the Lorax, I speak for the trees. The community organizations speak for the folks that are in those communities. They understand what their needs are. They understand what they need and what they want. And so you can't come into a community organization, or you can't come into a community and say, oh, I want to recruit a bunch of folks and bring them on board. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. We've never seen you before. Who are you? So you have to work with those community organizations that are already established in those communities, work in partnership with them. And so that's what we're currently doing. We're working with 13 organizations across the state where we've built out a coalition of clean energy partners where we're going to partner with them to actually speak on our behalf. So these community organizations are going to do the pre-apprenticeship training. They're going to be the ones to provide the barrier support that they need. So it's working with those community organizations and ensuring that they have the funding necessary to do the outreach, to do the engagement, to do the recruitment, and then you'll see the change. I mean, we work with IBW, and again, you know, as he mentioned, they're like, hey, whatever you want us to do, China, like, we'll do it. And that is what has been our key, is working with those community organizations.
Yes, I can add to that. The Maine AFL has done a great job reaching out to communities, and we just had, I think, one class of pre-apprenticeships come through, and we had a couple graduates from that pre-apprenticeship come join our first year class. So really it's just about doing our best to fund the apprenticeships, because right now we're having almost the opposite issue where we just can't get enough people to fill all the work we currently have. It's honestly a great problem to have. You know, like in my testimony I was saying, we took in double the amount of apprentices we typically take, and that's still just not enough. We're just having such a boom right now. It's just about making sure that we can maintain that quality of turned out electricians after the apprenticeship while still getting enough people coming in to fill the work that we have to come, because it's even more coming down the pipeline.
What I'm most proud of about my own home local is the number of women in our numbers. We're probably 600 man local, or member local, sorry. But I feel like my local has been very open and inclusive. And until we can get more of that message out there that, hey, we are here and we are welcoming, please come be part of us. We are a great thing. I think that's all you can do, is just be there and fulfill the promise that you make. You know, if you're going to say something, follow through with it. And I think that's what's the best thing that can happen.
All right, I'll answer. Excuse me. So unfortunately for our site, we haven't had any new hires, you know, as the past year. This past year, we started getting some new hires. So we do have a machinist program that we have, a mentorship, so to speak. So, you know, many young people that have come in, they have taken advantage of that apprenticeship. And I think a lot of it is breaking down that stigma. It wasn't glorified, you know, working at a factory is not the most glorious thing, or that's not the, you know, what we've been seeing as of late decades. So it was, you know, it's breaking down that stigma. Right now, like I said, having this new faces, diversity, now having conversations with some of the new employees where they come in, they tell me, you know, I just went and told my mom I'm going to go to college, you know, and like just seeing the honesty of how, you know, how excited they were. You know, I'm like the first person that's going to go to college. Just seeing those day-to-day kind of faces. Like I said, I was privileged to welcome them in and follow up with them to the point where they would share the stories with me, you know. And he's got a 3-month-old, almost like crying, you know, it's like in the middle of a factory telling me, like, I was excited to go tell my mom I'm going to go to college. I was accepted for this apprenticeship. So those are the stories that you know, that happen every day in a factory. And those are, you know, like I said, we have to break the stigma of factory workers. I mean, these are good paying jobs, union jobs that we have to fight for and keep fighting for.
Should I
like to add anything?
Yeah, I guess I would like to add that, I mean, the demographic of our site is a lot of older, people coming in, they already have experience. Their ideas of coming in really isn't to just to go to, college and stuff, they're a lot older, they have their families, they're there to work, I would say with the new classes coming in with the, wind department, there are a lot of younger people coming in. And I have a few people that do come up to me. They know I go to college and everything, and they have asked me about the, machinist program, the 2-year program, the reimbursement that they give to those who go to college. And, I would say a lot of my colleagues that are around my age have taken advantage of it. I know a couple of the people that were in my class when I came in on June 5th. They were part of the machinist program and the apprenticeship. And I see them from time to time. They're taking advantage of it. I would say there is a lot of process you can definitely get involved with, and it's there. I just think it's just the type of people that are coming into our job site that really, is kind of the reason for, they're not taking advantage of that, I don't think I don't think it's the issue of, providing. I think it's just so much of the people that are really on our job site.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. And Congressman Caston, did you have another question?
Yeah, I think all of us are thinking about the same issue from different angles because there isn't an industry in the country today that isn't saying we're having a hard time filling all the, I was talking to nurses yesterday and I was saying, last time I went to a restaurant, I had to use the UPC code to make my order, right? Like everybody's tight. And I serve in the Financial Services Committee, and every quarter the Fed gives us their monetary policy report. And I think the next one's about to come out, so hopefully it'll still confirm this trend. It's been shown that from 2000 to 2017, the U.S. economy, which was like a good economy, right? Unemployment was generally low during that period. In every single month, we had more jobs than workers. Since COVID, in every single month, we've had more, it's gone the other way. And so we've gone from essentially a buyer's economy for labor to a seller's economy for labor, which is part of why a lot of union negotiations have been going well lately. But it also raises the question of if this is, we should certainly make sure that people get better jobs. If we can move people, into a better line of work, let's do that where we can. But if the economy's running along, unemployment's low, and we're creating jobs faster than workers, that's awesome. But what do we need to do to get more people into the workforce? Immigration's an obvious answer. I think in this Congress, that's probably DOA. I'm curious, as you look in your recruiting programs for some of these apprenticeship efforts, what demographics in our society are saying, I would love to work, but I just can't right now because of fill in the blank, and what policy tools would you like to see us do to help remove some of those barriers? I mean, is it women in child care? Is it ban the box rules in the criminal justice system? Where should we be looking to increase that supply?
Well, I believe that child care is the biggest hurdle that really half the workforce has to deal with, until a parent finds qualified child care, they're not going to leave their children with them. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that you have.
With the exception of the Romero family.
Well, exactly. Now I have. Well,
I have worked with my son. Yeah. He's not here to defend me.
No, I think definitely childcare is one of the major hurdles for families for the workforce. Obviously, I have my son, but I also have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. So just having to work a week just to pay for childcare, it just doesn't. At some point, one person in the household has to stay home and be able to, take care of the kids. So it's childcare would be number one. Definitely, I think it's getting very expensive in this country, and shouldn't have to work a week and a half just to pay for childcare. At that point, are you really going to work for what?
I can quickly speak to that. I have a friend who his wife needs to be a stay-at-home mom because with their 5 children, it's literally financially better for them if she stays at home and watches the 5 children rather than trying to find childcare for 5 kids. It's literally better than going out and getting a $30 an hour job just because of how extremely expensive it is for childcare.
Anything else? Okay. I'd like to, Congressman DeSaulnier, would you like to add?
Thanks. Jason, I would love to work with all of you. There was an article, I think Monday, in the LA Times talking about the ongoing sort of whack-a-mole in California of keeping the environmental community and particularly the building trades, and IBW's getting a lot of work already from our wind and solar because of California's renewable portfolio standard, particularly in the Bay Area where I represent. Unfortunately, I also represent a district where Chevron is headquartered and have 5 refineries, and because of a bill I carried and talked Jerry Brown into signing, all that refinery work is required to be people who have graduated from the California Apprenticeship Program. And the industries who fought that very hard is now publicly taking credit for it. So it's created this dynamic that I had a long conversation with Julie Su yesterday, day before, and Secretary Granholm a few weeks ago about how do we have a clearer roadmap. We've got 3 generations of good paying jobs, and the Davis-Bacon provisions in the infrastructure bill, but on the Inflation Reduction Act, it's a little complicated, as Mr. Podesta has explained to us. So we do have some challenges. Some of them are cultural, as you know. But working with you, I'd love to work with you more in any comments you have. And your group does a great job in California. We have a wonderful group in the East Bay that works with our 2 labor councils and the State Labor Fed and the building trades. With the University of California's Labor Institute, which, you know, we love, the Labor Fed funds it, and they work with the Resources School at all the UCs. But we're sort of at a pivotal moment, and it was very discouraging. When I saw the article, I called a very good friend who's the business manager at my local IBW in the East Bay, who's very successful, and he just said, we're not working with certain people anymore. So it's the little whack-a-mole thing. I think the answer to that question is just to be more specific, and I think we can do it administratively in my conversation with the acting secretary to just show where these jobs are for the next 30 or 40 years. And then the more granular thing is, with IBW, it's one thing, but how do you take a Boilermaker or maybe a UA member who's specialized in the work in a refinery and show them how we're not turning them into coders, we're showing the respect that they deserve, but just showing how many jobs there, because they don't always trust us. So I don't know if you'd like to respond to that, but I don't mean to be a downer at the party, but this article, every time it seems like we're on a good trajectory, Jason, and you know probably better than I do, but we're moving in the right direction. We've got the governor and everybody's got it going in the right direction, but there's dynamics in here that are complicated. If we can be less trust us, we're going to have jobs for you. And this is part of the problem. No criticism to the administration on the incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act and the 380. I would have preferred just the same thing we had in the Inflation Reduction Act, that they're all Davis-Bacon. But I think we can get, and I'd love to have us all work on this, just be able to have the administration say, no, there's plenty of work here, and this is the pathway. Because it's a little bit too complicated for a business manager who's got to run every 3 years to go in and try to get reelected when their members already have good jobs and they're making over $150,000 a year. And God bless them.
Thank you for the question. And as you know well, we've been doing a lot of pretty in-depth work in Contra Costa County and with USW Local 5 at the Marathon facility and with the Labor Center have documented what happens when workers lose their jobs and try to find new jobs. Lower union representation, lower wages, sometimes no work at all, still don't have the support system in place to make that transition. I haven't read the article that you mentioned. I've read articles like it because reporters like those kind of articles. Look, we're not Pollyannas. I mean, Blue Green Alliance is set up to have almost only hard conversations, right? But our environmental and labor partners have them because we understand there's more we agree on than we disagree on, right? And with the IRA, we have a moment to build a lot of new stuff in the right way And that is fundamentally unifying to our labor and community partners. And I will say in Contra Costa County, we're bringing not only those partners, but EJ partners who really want to show up at the table and understand that their struggle is also the struggle of a worker who's lost, a 20-year job trying to find a new one, because it's ultimately about what kind of new economy are we trying to build.
They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
I had a 3 or 4 hour meeting with them just a month ago, and it's really working well. But at the state level.
So what I would say is, as you know,
California's sort of important in this regard.
There's $50 million now at the state level that USW Local 5, we and others are working on actually develop a better model for how you handle dislocated oil refinery workers. And what I'd at some point love to do is come back to you and come back to your colleagues and figure out how we can use what worked from that model to replicate something at the federal level.
Yeah, I think we need to do it in a way that's digestible for that business manager who's running for re-election, and his members already have good paying jobs, and the fossil fuel industry saying, why do you want to go? And it goes to some of our cultural challenges in this election cycle between the two groups. So making it understandable and having, like, the Department of Labor just come out and say, these are the jobs. And as we reauthorize WIOA, where you do need to be trained, you don't all need to be trained that much. Right. And IBW is a good example. You can take somebody out of a refinery and put them in solar or wind, but other crafts have more of a transition. So I just thought this was an opportunity to talk to all of you, to make you aware we've got a bill that we're going to do, and we're working with the Labor Department and DOE and EPA. So I'll bring it back to you, but it's frustrating, as you know. I mean, you know, of all people know.
Yes, I do.
But I also think I understand what it's like to try to get reelected in a local where you've got people who say, we already have good jobs. Thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? I might just start to wrap us up, if that's okay, with one kind of final, kind of more broad question to each of the panelists. Looking ahead to this next year, we talked a lot about this is a long-term, investment and a transition to clean energy. In this next year, in the work that you're doing in the workforce, but also the intersection with the clean energy transition, what are you looking forward to most in this next year in your work? And maybe if we could start with you, Mr. Romero.
In my work, what I would like to see the most is consistency, investment, and good union paying jobs. Definitely, the results, obviously, in the factory and having good quality products. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see that, and I would like to see definitely investments in policy, policy that support the investments and support our union workers. That's what I would say.
I would like to say that since I was one of the first classes that started very early on, I've seen how everything's been built from the ground up at my site. I can see that there's a lot of support, just from, not even from my side, but everyone here else on the panel. We just need, like my father said, consistency. And I'm excited to see just everything keep growing, what there is to be done. There's a lot of work, but I know that with everyone's contributions and investments, it can definitely get to a point where we will all thrive, and it will just be good for everyone overall.
What I'm looking forward to is what's next. 10 years ago, we would have never been having this conversation. And we want to talk about time. 10 years ago is not very long. What's going to happen in the next 5 years? Just look at what the technology has done for solar panels today from years ago. The potential is limitless. And that's what I'm most excited about.
It's definitely a good time to be optimistic. For me, what I'm looking for is continuing building strong coalitions, not just with the electrical trade, but with other trades and other community outreach groups. With our big offshore wind package, it was only done because we brought in, people from all over. We brought in the lobstermen and the fishermen who may be affected by where we were putting the wind turbines. That way we weren't creating unlikely enemies, we were creating allies before it even became an issue. Making sure that we're talking to anyone who might be affected, talking to the environmental groups, making sure that everyone's on the same page. That way, we're not ending up having strange enemies going forward. Just bringing as many voices to the table so as many different people's points of view can be seen.
I think for me, what's next and just kind of on the horizon for us is just seeing what the next generation of workers will be and what they'll look like. We're investing a lot into these pre-apprenticeship programs, and we're partnering with labor leaders and community organizations. So I'm interested in hearing the stories of impact and being able to bring back folks like the father and son here so that they can talk about the impact of clean energy and what these pre-apprenticeship programs have done for them.
Thanks, Jenna. And we started with Jason. We'll end with Jason here. What do you hope? Where do you hope we are in a year?
Well, actually, as you go out the door, I'm just going to, you expressed some frustration with how well or not you've been telling the story. About the inflation. Yeah. And what I want to see in the coming year is better stories told by the right storytellers. And what I think this panel is an illustration of is the fact that workers tell the best damn stories, right, about their work. Okay. And that, in particular, union workers who are empowered and supported by their unions tell their story. They're not telling a story because their boss is directing them to be a spokesperson. They're telling a story because they're a union member and they're proud of their work and they're proud of their union. And we need to multiply those stories across the country, and we need to create platforms for lifting them up and telling them. But we're not going to win the debate about the Inflation Reduction Act. We're not going to be able to adequately defend it from the attacks we've already seen. So I want to see more of that. But to make it work, we need more union workers in these jobs.
Yeah. I'm hoping that that's what this task force, some of the work that this task force is doing, is lifting up those messages and those stories. So thank you very much. Thank you to all of the panelists for being here, for traveling to be a part of this special day. So appreciate all that you shared. I also just want to take a moment to say thank you to Sharon and thank you to David, who are our SEEC staff team leading the way for us. So they helped us pull this together. So thank you guys. Thank you, Sharon, for making this happen. Thank you. Thank you all. Look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks.